Okay, I think we are about ready. Just need to adjust my seat here. Okay. Oh no. I forgot to turn my camera on. I exist. Okay. So we did a bunch of stuff with some other people's indie games on Friday. And as per usual, tonight is going to be a game dev stream. I've actually been working quite a bit on the inventory system off stream. It's not functional yet, but I've been working a lot of the framework for it. In fact, I'm moderately certain that if I were to attempt to run it as it is, it would probably crash because I've left too many bugs and unfinished bits. So, but let's see if we can get a little further along with that. And get some work done here. So, just kind of give a rundown of what I have done so far. A lot of components are involved, and those get pretty granular in terms of breaking things down into items and slots. Some of the basic work we did went back when we were still writing stuff in C++ and setting up some base classes, and that started the base for some of these, not character logic, under actors. Like our actual core item objects. We did have to create some stuff for inspecting. We need a render target. There's nothing visually unique about this here, but what it actually does, if you've never worked with a render target before or don't know what one is it targets a specific object, like a scene, or is targeted by a scene, is a more accurate statement. And I know this looks like it's a transparency here, but it's actually capturing the square, the cube that's currently selected for that inspection tool. And I have a few of these because I'm actually going to attempt something interesting with these. And that is so these are found in a few different places. The first is our inspection. So the inspect item, it just looks like a flat square here because of the way the system shows them in 2D here. But the idea is that in the game engine, this would, you know what, let's chill out the music. It's getting too hype. So the idea is that in the engine, like in the game, you would actually be able to like move your mouse or joystick and rotate this object around. You'd be in like the inspection tool where you can look up close at an object. So that's handled in here by this sub object. This here captures your the action of your mouse. That's really the only purpose that it serves. To catch that input. And then in the inventory system, we've got a bunch of different pieces that this consists of, but it sort of all starts with an inventory grid slot, which itself is consisting of a few different things. And then that can get repeated across a grid object that's got definitions in it when you create it about how many columns and rows it's given. And we've also got sort of a sample for our inventory object, like what an object might look like. I'm actually doing a couple things here. One of which is, where possible, I'm actually doing my UI using fonts. This was something I kind of set up the work for before. That was what we were doing with those input contexts, because fonts can render effectively at any size without necessarily looking blurry. And so I'm actually using Font Awesome. I have Font Awesome Pro, but I'm using Font Awesome to handle a lot of this UI. So that's like where this icon here saying that you can't get rid of this item. And then we've also got just some placeholder stuff. And this is a throbber. That's what it's actually called. And it is for loading. It would only show if the image was taking too long to load. It's just sort of because I've got an async. Here it is, the async load object, and it just, once the object loads, is fully loaded, that throbber gets removed. This is some context menu stuff, equipment slots. And then right now we have this guy. As our inventory. This is your main inventory. This would be like your temporary or your storage if you had your storage box open. I don't expect these to be all the different slots that I'll have you have equipped, but I was sort of just playing around with the idea of how they can be different sizes and how they can fit here. And the screen text wouldn't be visible in game. That's actually just a debug UI. One thing that I'm trying to do, and we'll see how it works, and we'll see if it ends up causing performance issues at all. So we talked about render targets before, and those where? Yeah, here we go. So our render targets, some of them are actually over here, or some of our capture tools are actually over here. So I've got this little placeholder mesh here for a weapon case. And it actually came in one piece with an animation. And I went through and I split the case in half in Blender. And so I've uploaded it in two different pieces as a skeletal mesh, but only the top half has any kind of visible animation. It'll play if I like update it. And so the idea is basically that these are captured in render targets, and they were not active. They had not been activated recently. Like when you're in game, they get activated immediately, but in the editor, it's a little trickier. You have to have opened them recently, and but they're actually spawned here. It's actually, so your suitcase is actually a three-dimensional object. And what I've got the reason they're separate is because I could just hide the UI element, and in a way I probably will have to make it look good, but I wanted it to look like the case was closed over the items that are in it. So yeah, the top of the case is actually its own items. You can see they're actually, the inventory slots are actually sandwiched between the background and the foreground, and the foreground is the top of the case. Since I haven't been able to have it in game yet, I haven't been able to like confirm that it looks correct. So that's going to be one of those things that we find out a little bit later. It doesn't get simulated here in the widget editor. I may need some coffee. So, but that would be the idea, is that your case would be a 3D object, which in truth is how they did it in even in the original GameCube version, but they did it a little differently. They didn't, I don't know that render targets would have been a thing. They were usually kind of like two ways that people would do 3D UI. The way RE4, or at least on the GameCube, did it is it like spawned a small little like scene with your stuff, your case and everything in the UI in the world in front of you, attached to the player camera. And you can do that, or you can like hide a little section of it off from the level and just teleport the camera to and from. But that second option means that you have to remember to like find a place to put that, and you might end up having to move it around. It's not really a problem, but it's something I could avoid. The latter you could technically do. In truth, in Unreal, you could have it there all the time, and in fact, depending on how you did it, it's likely that if you hit it all when it wasn't in use, it probably wouldn't affect performance, but it would be difficult to maintain, I think. Whereas if this option works and doesn't cause any, render targets can be a little hit or miss if you have a lot of them. Originally, I thought about doing the individual items in your case as render targets as well, but I decided that probably one, isn't necessary, and two, they're gonna look flat anyway, probably. So I'm hesitant to do that. It also, since some of them will be rectangular, some of them will be, square, the render target would have to be adjusted for each one, or there'd have to be two different kinds. I think it would be too complicated in the grand scheme of things to be worth it. And if you had a ton of individual items, let's say you had a ton of 1 and 2 cell items, I think you would have a problem. So I'm not doing that part with the render targets, though I think they could be cool that way. But this is the same trick I was doing with the main menu, actually, where when you were on the new game select screen, it would show a picture of a dude with a gun when you chose the main story. It's the same trick. He's here, he's posed. He could be playing an animation, but the animation I used for that is not a pose of him pointing his gun. It's actually halfway through like an aim stance that I've just paused. The final one will probably be something that I can animate or be different. I really wanted more of like a holding the gun up kind of situation, or something like that, but I don't really have any pre-made assets for that, so we just kind of used what I could find, and just made it look decent for now. Yeah, a lot of the other stuff I've been doing has been related to just the data that we need, the data types, for inventory related stuff. So it's mostly busy work more than anything else. And there's still quite a bit of that to be had. Yep, I'm gonna need coffee before all is said and done. So get row pure. We are good on the row. I'm having to create a HUD component. This will basically be this is an actor that will attach to the player HUD, and it's going to store a lot of this inventory information back and forth between the UI and the character or game. And so there's a lot of different functions that are needed for this. That's what I'm doing. Oh. I'm just having a yawning fit. I think when we have our next ad break in half an hour, I will go make coffee, is what I will do. So if possible, this one is this function is needed because we're going to, when we're moving items around, we're going to need to know like if the cell underneath it is available. That's our slot index. And technically speaking, can move is a Boolean. A Boolean, but we're storing it as an integer because it actually gets used to define a few other things where those values are not Booleans, and it's just easier, even though a Boolean is a 1 or a 0, to handle it this way. At least the way I was doing it at the time. But a lot of that's kind of already dealt with. So we need our drag widget. We're going to do a validated get, so we need to confirm that it's a valid instance of it before we go using it. This can go here, because if it's not valid, we're going to output 0 and 0. And then we're going to do a for loop. We're going to use an index of 1 and a last index from whatever we've passed in. So that basically this is going to loop until it counts up to whatever this number is. And then we need branch. We can do this guy, get its rotation, do a select, int times int, get selected slot, we're gonna add those together. And then we're going to do a get row. Oh, wait, nope. Not that get row. Unfortunately, we do have two get row functions. One is a global static function. Just the way it worked out. Hello, Amber. Slot type. The bornless. What is the bornless? You're looking while at work? You hope I am well. I am well. I'm in need of some coffee, so I think when about half an hour when I have my next ad break, I will go and make coffee, because I was yawning. Alrighty, let me set this guy. And this is going to be sort of an increment that we can track. So we're going to increment this guy. Alright, return node. We need another. Well, we need to finish this right here. We did not finish this. That would cause us a problem because we don't want it at 0. And then we need to do another select here. Take this guy. And for the horizontal, we times him by -1. Get selected slot. Do a greater than or equal to 0. And a select int. Pass that to our slot value. Ah, shit. There we go. Alright, so that checks for all the possible rows for a dragged item. Need a new function. This is gonna go under rotation. It needs to output an integer. And some of what I'm doing right here is actually just creating the input and output of some of these functions. And the reason is because I need them in other functions. Like a lot of these functions in this HUD component rely on each other, the way I've got it kind of mapped out. And since they're going to rely on each other, they kind of have to already exist. But they don't have to actually work for me to, like, put them in place. So I'll go through, create the inputs and outputs. If they're really fairly simple, I'll go ahead and do them. And then any of the other ones will wait until we get to a point that we can do the rest. So Integer. All right, start rotate widget. And this is just going to need to output an item. But specifically an item widget. Go away. There we go. All right, need a get dragged item size. Should return item size, which is a structure. Warden. Hello, Warden. I don't often see you in here. How are you doing? I'd give you a shout out, but I believe it's just Amber and I. But I can do it anyway. Thank goodness your username here is not as unreasonable as it is on Discord. Sensurbot, go away. I believe it's just you and Amber, but maybe there are some people not being countered in the... Well, okay. The largest problem with your username in Discord is that it isn't the same as your display name. So, like, your display name is one thing, but your username's another. And then Discord seems to have gotten better at its searching, but because you used, like, non-standard characters to spell Warden in your display name, even if I type Warden, half the time you don't come up. You're just a pain in the ass. Well, maybe sometimes. It's one of those things. It's not like a thing that I actually have to deal with so often that I actually have any right to complain about it. But it makes me feel better to bitch and moan. And quite frankly, that was what was important in this scenario. So, since you haven't been here in a while, I'll show you some of the stuff I'm working on. This is probably about as standard as you've seen it. It's just a little test level. It's not even remotely done. I would actually... I think I can launch the game. It might crash if I launch the game. I'm in the middle of doing the inventory system, and I don't know if I've left the game in a playable state. So I guess we'll find out. Oh yeah, no, it's not in a playable state. We're gonna leave that alone then. So basically, I'm working on the inventory system in the menus and such. And I have, it's going to be RE4 in style. So we actually have this guy. And he consists of a bunch of individual little pieces. What is the bot on about in chat? Jeez. And why did it... What was it going on about? My bot was going really weird in chat. Okay. He does that. And then he sasses you if you talk to him. So yeah, so these are all placeholder slots. I don't actually expect to even have this many equipment slots for the character in the grand scheme of things. It's more just playing around with how quickly you can navigate between them, that kind of thing. But this is the like attaché case RE4 system. It's got a grid here that can be defined to be different sizes. Like, I can... Although, to be honest, if it's going to do that, I'd rather just do it like that. That's fine. So I can easily adjust how many are in there. And it even kind of pads the case out a bit. I do see a potential problem in the lid, so that's when the case shifts size. So that is something I'll have to consider. And the reason that there's a problem with the lid is, so I wanted, you know, in RE4, whenever you open up the inventory, you actually see an animation of the case opening, at least the first time you do. I think it does it every time. And I wanted to be able to do that. And I know how they do it in the game, but it involves having your actual inventory in the 3D space. And 3D menus are kind of a nightmare. 3D UI and everything. So I don't want to do that. It also complicates how you're going to get the player there. So what I'm using is a feature called render targets. And it actually relies on a mesh that I split into blueprints. I split this case into two pieces. It was just a placeholder mesh that had an opening animation. One of these is the bottom, and the other is the top, which actually plays an opening animation, just like that. And they use these things called render targets to render them out onto a 2D material. And then they become textures like this. I don't actually know how it will look because I can't simulate it actually playing the animation without being in-game. So it may end up looking terrible and I may decide to ditch it. But the idea is that will allow... It's actually sandwiched between two pieces. So you have... That's the bottom. That's the inventory. And that's the top. So the top, when that animation plays, this top should, roughly speaking, line up with this, which will make it block the inventory from view. Which, of course, it's playing in reverse at that point, but it should look like the case is opening and whatever's in there should be visible at that point. Ultimately, it may end up looking like ass, but the reason that I'm going for that, let me see if I can find it. Because in the original game, let's say RE4. All right, I don't want your sponsor in your video here. This is the remake, which is, I'm not sure. Yeah, okay, here's the video for it. So, in the original Resident Evil 4, almost any UI element that you had, any HUD element, was actually spawned in the world. It was actually 3D. So when they would do like that's scope. Where's the inventory? That's the map. Yeah. So there's that HUD. Yeah. So it would spawn it in a scene like this, and everything's kind of overlaid. But what that would effectively mean in order to do this is either I have to load a separate level, every time the player opens their inventory, which is not really what you want. Because there could be a performance hitch there that makes that unpleasant. And you have to deal with some other shenanigans. Or it means hiding, and this is more likely what they did actually, is hiding the inventory in like a little pocket somewhere outside the level. And then like every time you open the inventory, you're teleporting the camera to that location. And that's also possible, but then that means adding that to every level. There's just overhead to that. There's also the possibility that you could do it by like, especially with today's games, and if you weren't going for like the highest end of graphics, you could attach it to your player character. Like it would always be there, but just be turned off until it was needed. And it would just be in the front of their face and stuff running around. But that would be kind of unwieldy in the long run. So, and it runs the possibility of glitching out. I think this is, if it works, this will be a close enough version of that. It won't look that 3D, I don't think, but I think it'll be fine. So what's really a lot is all of the back end work that is required to get the inventory functional, which is most of what I've been doing recently, including off stream. I've actually been working on this off stream quite a bit. Our class defaults, we want to hide everything except for the pins we need, because otherwise it is a nightmare. And then we're also going to check is valid. Before we proceed, and if it's not valid, we return empty. Same is true from here. Cool. So that's our dragged item size. We do the same thing for rotation. Get dragged item rotation. I played a game on Friday, an indie game that I got some early access to that was very much seemed very much like Warframe, in my opinion. I wasn't super sold on the art style. But part of that was because oh, I know why I should show it to you. I remember why I was bringing this up. You should know about this because not only is it going to have that sort of Warframe-esque situation, Warframe Destiny-esque situation, but it has like XCOM type stuff going on. So I played this game, and it's a third-person shooter in some parts. Some missions are your standard like third-person shooter affair, and then it has XCOM style turn-based gameplay for some missions where it actually like rolls a dice for actions. And then it has space combat where you're flying around, but then space combat also has a turn-based mode that's more akin to chess. It was kind of interesting. The space combat was pretty fluid. I wasn't sold on the art style because, and it doesn't really come across in these screenshots, they're trying to do this like painterly world effect, but the characters are crisp, and so it ends up kind of clashing too much, was my opinion. But it was interesting to play. When it hits early access, it'd be more interesting to put more time into it. So and then Friday, I'm looking to play some Outer Worlds 2. Alrighty, that takes care of that one. Dragged item rotation. Alrighty. and back item. All right, we're going to check if that's valid. If it is not valid, we're going to return node. Get the slot index. Whoops. And the slots type. And split this out. And check if this is valid. If it's not valid, we want it removed from its parent. I want to set that as empty. And return again. All right, we're about to have an ad break in like 30 seconds. And when we go on ad break, I'm going to make some coffee. And refill my water. All right, we are going to have ads, and I will be right back. Okay, it took me a minute to make coffee. All right, back we go. All right, we have returned, and I have coffee now. Let's see, did I miss anything? No. Okay. From here, we can pull our slots array. And slots type. We can then show. Oh, wait, I'm missing a component. Yeah, we still need. Why does the music sound like it's being staticky? Going to I don't know if it's staticky for stream, but I'm going to reset my audio here. What? I don't see voice meter. Is that why it's staticky? Did voice meter crash? I gotta be honest, I can never remember. It should be potato. Oh, there it is. It opened like it was there. Where were you hiding? Alright, well, in any case, restart. Okay, everything should be fine now. If there was a problem on my end, it should be fine now. So we need a few things. Okay, we need one in here. And it needs to output an array and it can be pure. So from this guy, length, make sure it is greater than 0. If it is greater than 0, we send it on its way. If it is not, then we need to use this guy. And then we can do equipment slots. Okay. Equipment. Did I not make that a variable? We're returning this, so yeah, it's a variable. Equipment slot canvas. Equipment. There it is. I have no idea. Not set. Damn it. Damn it. I did it again. All of the children from that, and we loop through them with for each loop. And as long as this is valid, that's what we do. Once it's completed, we return a node with our equipment slots. But we otherwise need to cast to W. Inventory. Equipment slot. And as a slot, I'm going to add a unique. Okay. Which then means we can do and this should output do that. Get equipment widgets, or slots rather. Oh, that's bum, bum, bum. Cast to equipment slot. We need to get our slot. Let's see. We need to get slots widgets. Nope. Slots type. That's what I'm looking for. Get equipment slot widgets. What? Why? Why would it put it there? Oh, it's because it's a fucking array. From when I was creating the other stuff. Coffee. Let's see. Under inventory, we need to show slots by type. Inventory. Boolean. Oh, actually. Hang on a second. Boolean. Integer. And these are going to be an array of slots. Type. Store that as a local variable. Get slots of widgets. We do a for each loop. And then inside that, because we're just absolutely bonkers, we want to do another for each loop. This is usually a really bad idea, but for what we're doing, and no often than it should have to happen, it should be all right. Branch that off. Right, that's in here. So for this guy, we should now be able to do a show slots by type. And then set visibility. Set that to empty. And then return. Okay, we now need index. Let's see, get last Sybil index, drag right. Excuse me. All right, there's it. These should all be integers. Slot and can move. Move item. False. It's a return node. Set this false and return as well. Drag widget. And this is going to be item, which should be inventory item. Set that as pure, and we need to output item size. Drag widget, validated get, get item size. Oop. And if it's not valid, just return with nada. digit rotation. All right, that's got that one done. Okay. We need to put another one in here. Excuse me. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. This is a fairly complicated one, so I don't know that I'm going to code it right just yet. But I am going to put in all of its required variables because I think I'm missing. Yeah, I'm missing some of the ones it's going to rely on. So, but some others rely on it. So it's kind of a whole mess in that way. One. Boolean. Boolean. There should be item rotation, integer, and item object, class reference. And then So that's gonna be item class, amount, rotation, the array index, shortcut index, can remove, whipped, and there's our output. We need to get the drag widget. Get. Validated get. Remove from parent. Create temp move widget. That's going to be our turn value. Slots type. Get drag widget. Okay. And index slots type. Valid inventory component. Get slot info. And let's see, that and that. We can break this. Get our occupied slots. Get is valid index. Branch that. Okay, got that in there. If it's not valid, return here, as well as if this is false, return here. We output the index if that's the case. Okay. Put this guy here. Boolean. Visible. Center the mouse position. Let's see. Show slots. Let's do set inventory status. Call this. Hope that cough doesn't mean I'm coming down with something. I've had a persistent cough all day, which is a little concerning. Shortcuts. Okay, so The next one I need is for the inventory section of functions, and that's going to be, we need to initialize our inventory slots. And we do this and do this. So let's type. And then we should get the inventory slot. Hang on. Where are my slot widgets? Inventory grid slot, rather. And then array. And then move all item widgets. Custom width. remove item widgets. Get this, reverse, for each loop. Why is my phone going absolutely nuts right now? Okay, I don't know what that was about. And then, if that's the case, we can remove parent. And then remove from the array. For each. Is valid. All right, we have an ad break. Let me just place this here. Interesting. Very interesting. Loud. That was very loud. Sorry, stream shouldn't have heard it, but I was looking at something and it was very loud. Interesting. Okay. Alright, so we've got a valid component. If we have a valid component, we should be able to get the slots from it. And then load item widgets. Okay. So we've got those. We need to now we need functions for adding to the grid, like adding new items to the grid. So function and add item to grid. Class reference to our item. We need our slots type. Now we need to get the occupied slots. We'll do those as an integer array. And we're gonna need the item rotation. That does not need to be an array. And we're going to need the amount that we're adding. If I can frickin' spell. There we go. That is an integer. If it's being added to a shortcut, we're going to need the shortcut index. And the width will probably be necessary as well. Because there's a couple things I want to kind of handle all with just this one function. Can destroy and equipped. Cool. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom. Boom, 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 boom. We're gonna need some local variables as well, but I think we can promote most of these regardless. Let's see here. I can do this as L item class. And that's spelled wrong. I don't care. And then okay. Let's at this point find out is let's get our inventory status. And if it is not equal to closed, then we can proceed. Move that for now, because this is going to end up occupying a bunch of space. True. Create widget of inventory item. A rotation, slots type, default rotation, this should be a reference to self. And we've got our item class. And can destroy, equipped, and then we can get input device. Bottom, bum, bum, bottom, bum, bum, bottom. Okay. Oop. Ba, ba, ba. And get that. Occupied slots. Get. Copy. Index. Slots type. Split. Info item reference. Find item in shortcuts. That item. Return value. Split. kilo. And then we can promote this to a local variable. Oh geez. Check if it's valid first. Then, if it is not, we return a node. If it is valid, then we want to add it to here. We can show slots by type. Set size. Get widget slot size. Okay, I don't have that one yet. And item class. Get our class defaults. We only want size. And from rotation, do a select. But we're gonna, well, I hope if we set what the pin type is first. Aspect ratio, split. Let's put the default size there. And then we also need a size break. Switch those. That should do that. Okay, so we need a widget slot size. Get widget slot size. It's going to be a pure. And we just need two integer values for our return. And we're dealing with size and half size. Get inventory options. Inventory slot size. And divide by 2. Get slot size. We get occupied slots is valid index. All right, we have just about hit the 3-hour mark, and we're about to have ads in like less than 5 minutes, but I don't like ending right after an ad break. So I'm going to try to get us out of here real quick. And I will be back on Thursday for some more game dev, as usual. Let me see what's going on here. We got because I don't want the ad break to hit before, you know, or right there, and then I leave or close the stream right after the ads. I hate when the timing on that happens. So let's go pay a visit. He's not doing game dev, but we're gonna go pay a visit to another game dev streamer. Let's do this. Alright, so we're gonna go pay a visit to Kill. Let's see. My stuff's all lagging out here. Let's see. Actually, give me a second here. Let's do... let's do Starby. Because Starby does the music for my game. And I'd rather give Starby the read. For whatever reason, my thing was lagging out trying to watch Cool, and I don't want to be like unable to talk to him. But it's not lagging on Starby's, so we're gonna do Starby. Everybody have a good night.